Welcome back to the Wii Music Iceberg. So, in these layers, there's going to be a lot of jokes, there's going to be a lot of speculation. It's just going to be a wild ride. So, here we go. Layer 7. Humans exist in the Wii Music world. This is a simple one. All of the songs in this game are real-life songs that were made by humans, which means that humanity must exist in the Wii Music world. If each game in the Mii series takes place in the same universe, Tomodachi Life having the Berlin Wall in it, among other things, just further proves the existence of humanity in the Mii universe. Party Phil is Sebastian Toot's son. The resemblance between Party Phil and Sebastian Toot is particularly uncanny. The other Toots don't quite resemble Party Phil as much as Sebastian does. Peter, JJ, and Natalie have different skin colors, Pedro is very short, and Susie and Bob have different hair colors. In addition, Phil and Sebastian are very similar personality-wise, having more or less the same role in their respective games. Sebastian Toot does have different hair color than Phil, who has a little bit of black hair under his hat, but since Sebastian Toot's hair is white, that might just be because he's old. Party Penny does have blonde hair just like Bob, but it is very common for very young children to have blonde hair until eventually reaching their final hair color in adolescence. Bob, on the other hand, is clearly an adult. Also, Phil doesn't have a mustache like Sebastian, but that could be because he shaves. Toots might have been added later in development. In the beta footage containing Michael Tottori, there are no Toots to be seen, however there are Miis. It is very strange that the Toots would not appear at all in the beta footage. You could just say that these guest Miis are simply just players, However, the simple fact that Michael Tottori is a Mii rather than a Toot seems to imply that the Toots were not originally planned to be in a game at all. To add on to this, I think that the reason Party Phil is a Toot is because Nintendo wanted to actually have a Toot that moves around. It doesn't just have the same animations as the Miis, but they didn't have enough time to make a bunch of new animations for Sebastian Toot. Modding B-notes into normal songs. This is another speculative entry to give the Iceberg a sense of mystery, like the Mario Kart Wii Iceberg, which had entries like tracks with multiple ultra shortcuts. Anyways, the weird thing about B-notes is that, unlike normal notes in A-notes, they do not show up on the note sheet except for in the tutorials. Judging by the fact that the sample songs that you can listen to in the tutorial section have the Toots play B-notes as well as non-chord A-notes, it seems to be possible to make the Toots play those notes rather than just using the normal ones. In addition, on guitar and horn type instruments, the Toots play notes of different lengths rather than just the same length every time, so it must be possible to add B-notes to the note sheet. Weem-Fi. Another speculative entry. It is theoretically possible to make this game compatible with Weem-Fi, but nobody's done it as of this video's release, at least as far as I know. The only thing that you were able to do was send songs to your friends, which wasn't really that useful. I'm not sure if you're able to download your friend's songs, but if that is a feature, then it might be worthwhile to give this game a Weem-Fi mod, as that would allow for players to make collaboration songs where one player does some parts and sends the song data to the other player who does the rest of the parts. Naoko and Wii Party. This is really strange. On the Japanese Nintendo website, there is an image of Wii Party's buddy quiz with the Mii Naoko as player 1. What makes this weird is that Naoko is a Mii that doesn't appear anywhere except for in the Nintendo-made Wii Music song, the Ross Quintet, and in the aforementioned buddy quiz image. I think this must mean that the gameplay-related promotional materials for these games both use the same Wii. We Speak Missed Opportunity. This is another self-explanatory entry. It is weird how Nintendo didn't add a singing mode with Wii Speak to this game, especially considering how both Wii Music and Wii Speak were announced in the same E3. To be fair, Wii Speak came out later than Wii Music, but it was only like 1 month later, so that doesn't explain everything. Another possibility is that Nintendo was aware that Wii Speak wasn't exactly the highest quality microphone. Just imagine if this were a thing and it was showed off in that infamous E3 presentation. That would have worsened this game's already bad reputation. Toot Mii Evolutionary Link. We are almost entering into joke entry territory now. The Toots and Miis are very, very similar, so much so that the only real difference is that Toots and Miis have different heads and speak different languages. Aside from that, the Toots and Miis pretty much have the same exact features, including the weird ball hands and even the same animations. Since Party Phil has normal arms, unlike Wii Music Toots, you can even say that the Toots have the same inconsistency with whether or not they have arms. Toots and Miis also have the same singing voices. Also, as stated earlier, Toots have favorite colors just like Miis. If we can say that Piantas and Pikmin are related on that Mario Sunshine Iceberg, we can surely say that Toots and Miis are related as well. The biggest question, aside from another one that will show up later, is what would their most recent common ancestor have looked like? What the unused drums on drum sets would sound like. This is very speculative. It is safe to assume that the unused drum sounds on the reggae, Latin, and ballad drums aren't actually in the game's files, since it would have been unnecessary. However, we can at least imagine what they would sound like if you could use them. In real life, drum sets used for reggae music may have the drums modified so that they sound like the timbales, which are important in reggae music, so the tom-toms as well as the big drum, not the bass drum, but the other big one, would probably sound similar to the timbales. On the Latin drums, the left tom-tom would probably just sound like a higher pitched version of the right tom-tom, which is the one used when you hold the B button. I'd imagine the unused drums on the ballad drums would be similar to the ones on the jazz drums. Layer 8. MeTubers. The MeTuber community is a loosely defined community of YouTubers. By Eric Goebbel's definition, some more famous YouTubers such as Professor can be considered MeTubers. However, it is unlikely that those YouTubers have ever used the label MeTuber. Anyways, when people talk about MeTubers, they're usually referring to a bunch of smaller YouTubers whose content is primarily focused on Mii games like Wii Sports Resort, Wii Music, Wii Party, Tamagotchi Life, and Miitopia. People in this community often use each other's Miis for mutual benefit. If two MeTubers are currently having drama with one another, they will likely not use each other's Miis, and may, for example, ask that you do not voluntarily use both of their Miis in one video. I say voluntarily because background Miis don't count, since the player cannot control which Miis appear in the background. Eric Goebbel. Eric Goebbel is a person who has been mentioned a lot regarding certain entries on this iceberg, so I'm pretty much obligated to put him on this iceberg. Anyways, Eric Goebbel is a MeTuber with around 200 subscribers, and his channel has a particular focus on Wii Music, which is his favorite game. Many MeTubers often upload mostly Wii Music videos, but Eric's focus on Wii Music is particularly notable. Out of his 789 videos, 616 of them are Wii Music songs. Well, as of when I made this, I didn't consider the fact that he will upload new videos while I'm making these videos. Anyways, Eric is 18 years old as of this video's release. Currently, his most viewed video is Wii Music Stop with the Reggae, which got 1,500 views in only a month. Aubrey. Aubrey is another small YouTuber who uploads almost exclusively Wii Music videos. Aubrey currently has around 150 subscribers, most of whom actually subscribed years before he started uploading a bunch of Wii Music videos, and his most... that's so outdated. That's not my most viewed video anymore. My most viewed video is the one called Jazz Makes Everything Sound Good Now, but it got popular in only like 4 days, which is insane. Anyways, in only 3 months, Aubrey has already made an impact on the Wii Music community, and some members, such as Kozakura and Blissey the Blackberry Koopa, have made Wii Music songs based on his songs. He also recently created and made videos about the Wii Music Iceberg, which I think you should watch. Toots are born to be musicians. Why did I even make this so long? There will be a lot of speculation about the nature of the Toot species in these later entries. Anyways, aside from Party Phil, the Toots seem to do nothing but play music. A normal person would assume that the Toots just learned to play all these instruments just like the rest of us. However, just think about the sheer amount of instruments that the Toots can play. No real human being can be a perfect player of the piano, steel drums, timpani, guitar, sitar, banjo, flute, violin, cello, and so on at the same time. It would take hundreds of years to study all of these instruments. The only explanation for this is that the Toots are just simply born with musical knowledge. In addition, many of the areas in this game are named after music terms like Music Mountain and Harmony High Rise, which would be weird for a species that isn't known for being born musical. Even the name Toot is supporting evidence as it is derived from the word tutorial, which is even more apparent when you consider that Sebastian Toot was originally going to be a Mii named Michael Tutori. I guess the Miis also have this ability too. But unlike the Toots, they actually have to take lessons to learn instruments, though the lessons only take minutes rather than months and years. The Guy Creates review of Wii Music. There are many reviews of Wii Music on YouTube, which are almost always negative. However, the Guy Creates review is apparently a major exception. I haven't watched it, but I'm just gonna assume that it is fair and good. However, the video does not have many views, likely due to the Guy Creates being a small YouTuber. NES horn other buttons purpose. Unlike the drums one, it's very difficult to imagine what the unused buttons would do on the NES/Famicom horn. If I had to guess, I'd say the D-pad would alter the mode, key, pitch, etc. The start and select buttons might be to turn the horn on and off, as it is wireless and would thus have a rechargeable battery. Another thing that is weird is that the 1 and 2 buttons seem to have an identical function. Maybe they are just there so that it looks like an NES Famicom controller, or so that the Mii doesn't have to spam the same button over and over again to play a song. As for how it can play melodies, the explanation that makes the most sense is that it works like a kazoo, where the user's voice is what decides the notes. Oh boy, Little Hans' unfortunate name. You may know this if you search Little Hans on Google. Apparently, Little Hans was a nickname given to Austrian opera producer Herbert Graf as a child. As a young child, Little Hans witnessed a traumatic event. He saw a horse collapse while carrying a heavy load. After witnessing the event, Hans developed a fear of horses and heavy vehicles falling over, which his father, being influenced by the messed up psychology of the time, believed was due to mommy issues and because of how horses have large penises. The famous neurologist Sigmund Freud analyzed this case and explained it with some of his own messed up psychological theories, agreeing with the dad on the mommy issues thing, but surprisingly not the horse penis thing. Wii Music being used as an exam in music class. This comes from a YouTube comment. I think it was on RT Games video, or maybe some other big YouTuber's video. Anyways, I'm not sure if they were joking or not, but the commenter said that in music class they were asked to play Wii Music for their exam. This sounds fake, but it is entirely possible that a school in a low-income region would do this, not just because of the area being low-income, but also because of public schools being notoriously underfunded. Honestly, my biggest question is how they would actually grade such an assignment. Donkey Kong 64 style. If you played the N64 as a kid, either due to being a 90s kid or because your parents owned one, it is entirely possible that you tried to replicate all of the instruments that the Kongs use in a Wii Music video. For those who haven't played DK64, here are the instruments the Kongs use. Donkey Kong uses the bongos, Diddy Kong uses the guitar, Lanky Kong uses the trombone, Tiny Kong uses the saxophone, and Chunky Kong uses the triangle. You can't replicate it exactly, since some of the instruments are not in Wii Music, but there are instruments that are close enough. Specifically, you can use the congas, DK's bongos, the guiro, Chunky's triangle. Make sure to only use A notes, which use a metal guiro, the bass trumpet, Lanky's trombone, the saxophone, melody or harmony, and the electric guitar, chord, melody, or harmony. This was done by Herman Miller in his song Kong Lake, where he used the electric guitar as the harmony, though he did play a lot of chords using the C button on the nunchuck and the saxophone as the melody. Sebastian Toot is a dictator. Oh boy, this is one of those entries. In the park stage, there are statues that resemble Sebastian Toot. You may think that these are just silly statues that you'd find in a park. However, the way they look strikes me as reminiscent of totalitarian regions such as North Korea and Stalin's USSR. If those are just silly statues, they'd be colorful rather than just gray. In addition, these statues appear to be made of stone and are much larger than the Mii's and even the benches they sit on. Well, I mean, yeah, the benches the Mii sit on, not that the statues do. If only English had like a genitive case or whatever you need for that. Anyways, another piece of evidence is that one of the 3 portraits in the music room resembles Sebastian Toot, likely being his grandfather or another relative. These 3 portraits also remind me of portraits of figures like Marx, Engels, Mao, Dong, Kim Il-sung, etc. that can be found in many buildings and areas across numerous Marxist-Leninist and former Marxist-Leninist areas. Layer 9. Electric guitar actually uses your house's electricity. This is inspired by an entry on the TF2 Iceberg, which was in turn likely inspired by a meme that was posted in r/technicallythetruth. Since the Wii, its remotes, and the TV itself are powered with electricity, That means that, technically speaking, the electric guitar in Wii Music actually runs on real electricity. Aubrey is a dude. The previously mentioned YouTuber Aubrey is often mistaken for being a girl, likely due to his channel name, profile picture, banner, and possibly due to the fact that one of his main Miis, which is named Aubrey, is a female Mii. In his Tamagotchi-like videos, as well as his real-life instrument videos, we can clearly see that Aubrey is actually a 16-year-old, as of this video's release, boy, who even has facial hair. Aubrey's legal first name is currently not actually Aubrey, but he has expressed a desire to have it changed to Alberic, with Aubrey as a nickname. Aubrey is usually a feminine name in the United States, but it is often used as a masculine name in the United Kingdom. Historically, Aubrey has been a masculine name coming from Proto-Germanic roots meaning king/ruler of elves. It probably became a feminine name in the United States due to being similar to Audrey. The Mulks. This is really weird. The Mulks was apparently a Wii Music YouTuber who uploaded many videos until eventually deleting them all. Their channel still exists, but it has 0 Wii Music videos, and I don't think it's called The Mulks anymore. I think there was another Wii Music YouTuber who made a bunch of great videos until eventually deleting them all. Unlike the Mulks, this YouTuber made a bunch of remakes of their old videos on Twitch. I also remember this YouTuber being a furry. WM, Matt Sharples, Saxophones 1397, Koteno Project. These are simply a bunch of other Wii Music YouTubers who eventually stopped uploading. The reason these ones in particular are so low is because of how small their channels are/were. Toots may have lived on Woohoo Island prior to Mii's. There is a Wii Sports and Resort Iceberg, which explains that Woohoo Island was inhabited by a different species prior to Mii's. In order to connect these 3 games, we can theorize that this species was the Toots. There isn't really much supporting evidence, aside from the fact that the Toots are the only other human-like species that can be found in the Wii series games. Since there are no Toots in Wii Sports Resort, I can imagine that the Toots who lived there were either wiped out by Mii invaders, or simply forced off the island by Mii invaders, or killed by the eruption of Makawoohoo. Do keep in mind that the destruction caused by volcanic eruptions is often followed up by a period of great flourishing. Bebops are Toots. Another Toot one. The Bebops are clearly sentient, and they have the same mouths as the Toots. Therefore, we can safely say that they are a small subspecies of Toots. Nintendo is no stranger to making big and small versions of their species. For example, Koopas and Goombas vary greatly in size. There are tiny Goombas, normal Goombas, large Goombas, and Mega Goombas, and the same applies to Koopas, except there aren't any tiny Koopas as far as I can remember, and there's also Bowser who's even bigger than the Mega Koopas. If I had to guess what role the Bebops have in human society, Toot society, I'd say they have a similar role to dogs in human society, which could have unethical implications. Alternatively, they might actually just be baby Toots rather than an entirely different subspecies. The giant notes on Music Park and Mario Kart don't have the Toot mouths, so they're probably not Bebops. Multiplayer songs that actually sound good. This is a joke entry. I'm sure there are many multiplayer songs that are at least decent, but you can't really find them on YouTube. Since the blue, red, green, and yellow suits on the Miis only show up while playing and not in the music video, you can't really tell by simply watching a video. What I'm trying to say is that unless all of the players are of a high skill level and know exactly what they're going to do for the song, you can't really become the next J. Paul using multiplayer mode. Michael Tutori, Tumblr Sexy Man. This entry's kind of dumb. When I googled Michael Tutori in order to find info about him, I saw like one vaguely sexy drawing of him and thought, OMG, he's a Tumblr Sexy Man. In reality, Michael Tutori is not exactly a Tumblr Sexy Man. A Tumblr Sexy person is a fictional character that an unusually large amount of Tumblr users find romantically and or sexually attractive, such as Sans, Spamton, or Reagan from Mob, or whatever it's called. It is theoretically possible that this video will turn him into one in the future, though. Addisons are Toots. Another joke entry. In Deltarune Chapter 2, the internet-based world of Cyberworld contains many species, one of which is the Addisons, who have puppet-like designs and, in their own words, do nothing but advertise and sell things all day. Spamton, who especially looks like a puppet, and also resembles the German philosopher Max Stirner, probably completely unintentional, is an exception, as he actually does live a legitimate life, albeit one that is still one-dimensional and dreadful. The only similarities between the Toots and the Addisons is that both resemble puppets, and both are known for doing one particular thing. For Toots, it's making music, and for the Addisons, it's advertising. Both of their names are also puns on the things they do. Wii Music Anthology. Something that it isn't a joke or speculation for once. The Wii Music Anthology is a very small Wii Music channel that randomly showed up, uploaded 100 videos, and stopped uploading. I made a comment on one of the channel's videos asking what it was about, and fortunately, the owners actually told me what it was all about. It was a project by a bunch of friends who decided to make 2 entire 50-song albums in Wii Music. The first one tells a coherent story, and the second one simply consists of songs that are made for fun. I'm not sure why this exists, but it is cool. Blissey the Blackberry Koopa simping over Pedro Toot. This is yet another humorous entry, and it was suggested by Blissey herself. Blissey is one of the quote-unquote MeTubers mentioned earlier, and she has a lot of Wii Music videos containing Pedro Toot. I'm not sure why she likes Pedro in particular, but I'm not one to judge. I guess Pedro is cool since he wears purple, which is my favorite color. Me's outnumber Toots. This is more or less a filler entry. What I'm suggesting with this entry is that the reason that every map is full of Me's with not a single Toot in sight is because there are more Me's than Toots in Music Land. There could be multiple reasons why. The Me's are an empire that is colonizing Music Land like how they have colonized Woohoo Island, or alternatively, which is kind of the opposite actually, would be the Me's being slaves to the Toots rather than the other way around. Which works well with the Sebastian Toot is a dictator theory and are essentially bred like dogs. Or maybe the Me's and Toots simply live peacefully with one another. Yeah. Like, you know, game theorists, they for them it's like a game actually being like wholesome and nice is just their kryptonite. Everything has to be dark and freaking scary. That's like the whole point of this. Unironically finishing all the drum mode tutorials. This is probably the most obvious joke entry, but also probably the most humorous one. That is quite humorous indeed. I'm sure many people have finished all the drum mode tutorials, since finishing the tutorials is one of the most sensible things to do when beginning a video game. What this entry is suggesting is that the drum mode tutorials are simply unnecessary, since drum mode has only a few niche uses unless you are really good at it. If you are not a real drummer, the drum mode tutorials are too hard. And if you are a real drummer, you can probably figure out how to use drum mode effectively by using free play for like 5 minutes. The J. Paul Music subscribed to Aubrey in 2013. This is kind of a mundane one. Back in 2012 and 2013, Aubrey watched a lot of Wii Music videos, which is why he still plays the game to this day. He also subscribed to J. Paul, since he was still uploading frequently at the time. Since he often subscribes to people who subscribe to him, he subscribed to Aubrey, despite the general lack of videos on Aubrey's channel at the time. Recently, J. Paul commented on some of his favorite videos of Aubrey's. It is always nice to see an older YouTube channel interact with a newer one. Layer 10. This was going to be the last layer, but then I decided to make a layer 11 with just one craziest possible entry. Grand Unified Toot Theory. This is probably the simplest entry in this layer. What it is suggesting is that all the theories about the Toots on this iceberg are not a bunch of disconnected theories, but rather pieces of a whole complete theory about the Toots. This is based on an entry in the Conspiracy Iceberg, which the YouTuber Wendigoon made multiple videos about. The entry was titled Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory or something along those lines. There is also a joke entry titled Grand Unified Soy Theory. Dark Lord can't steal Toots' faces. In Metopia, the villain, Dark Lord, steals faces from Me's and puts them on monsters. Since the Toots are not customizable, and their mouths are actually part of their head rather than whatever the hell the Me's have, it is hard to imagine how the Dark Lord could steal a Toot's face. Aside from that, the features on the Toots seem to be more attached to their faces than the features on the Me's, if that makes sense. This entry is very difficult to explain, so I hope that explanation was sufficient. Tootish Tyrolat Pigeon. There are a lot of linguistics-related joke entries here. A pidgin language is a simplified mix of multiple languages that is used so that different groups of people can communicate with one another. Given enough time, pidgins often evolve into creoles, which are complex languages in their own right. entire lot is a constructed language created by Herman Miller, and he has many videos that use the language. Tutish is a dialect of Proto-Basque. Proto-Basque is the reconstructed ancestor of the Basque language, which, as far as we know, is completely unrelated to any other language except for the extinct Aquitanian language. Whether or not the Toots gibberish actually sounds like Basque is up to your opinion. Tutish is often compared to Russian or Italian, and Basque does have some similarities in pronunciation to Spanish, probably due to the Basque country being in Spain, as well as Francisco Franco's dictatorship. Like, he would, force them to, sound more like Spaniards or something. So it might not be crazy to suggest that Tutish sounds similar to Basque. There are a lot of memes about the mystery of the Basque language, which is why I mentioned it here. Friedrich Toot. This entry is based on the fact that one of the Toot portraits in the music room resembles the German philosopher and poet Friedrich Nietzsche, despite him not being particularly known for his connection with music. However, to say that Nietzsche had nothing to do with music would be a lie, as he was friends with Richard Wagner, stated that without music life would be a mistake, and even composed some songs of his own, which were probably not very good. Me Toot Hybrid, speculative entry. Since Me's and Toots are so similar, it's entirely possible that they can reproduce with one another. The question is, what would the cross between a Me and a Toot look like? Would it be a powerful species that mixes the best abilities of its parents, or would it just be some freak of nature? Tootish orthography and writing. We never actually get to see the Toots write anything down in their language, so it's unclear if the Toots even have a written language or not. If so, what do you think it would look like? Would it use the Latin alphabet, or would it just use its own entirely different alphabet? Yankee Doodle and Sur les Ponts d'Avignon are the same song. These two songs, specifically their Wii Music renditions, sound suspiciously similar. The structures of the songs are quite similar as well. I might actually make a Wii Music video demonstrating this, but I probably won't make it now since I have to go back to school and all. You can probably also say this about American Patrol and Carmen. Galactic Horn is based on music made using the Holy C programming language. Holy C is the programming language for the operating system Temple OS, which was created by the late Terry Davis. It is a long story, but basically, due to his belief that he was the next Messiah, Terry tried to create the biblical third temple via computer programming, and the result of this would be Temple OS, a website with many fun and interesting applications, including the creation of some very incomprehensible yet beautiful music. Kind of reminds me of one of those wave genres, like vaporwave, stuff ending in wave. The Galactic Horn sounds vaguely similar to the music of Temple OS, especially when pressing the B button. Actually, the NES horn is probably closer, but I'm too lazy to change the entry. Unfortunately, Terry Davis is no longer with us, as he died in a railway accident, which might have been a suicide. Oh boy, Chris Chan's songs. You know what they say, everything on the internet leads to Chris Chan. According to the Wiki, one of the video games that Chris Chan owned was Wii Music. Chris Chan probably made some songs on Wii Music, but the songs were probably not uploaded on YouTube or any other website. For once, something Chris Chan did wasn't actually documented on the internet. Switch Sports is the Toots' revenge for their mistreatment. After Wii Party U, Nintendo stopped using the Toots while the Miis lived on. That was until the Switch came and the Miis started being used less often. In the trailers for Switch Sports, not a single Mii can be seen, though fortunately you can play as them in the actual game. What if the reason the Miis are being abandoned is because the Toots are being mistreated and responded by casting a curse on the Miis? Why else would Bob Toot be depressed in the happy world of Musicland? E3 presentation was a normie filter. We all know about the E3 presentation. It was horrible and it ruined the reputation of Wii Music for the rest of time. But what if it was actually a blessing in disguise all along? Think about it. The people who were turned off by the presentation were probably not worthy of Wii Music's power anyways. But the people who were able to look past the presentation and actually try the game out were the blessed ones. Therefore, in the long run, the quote-unquote horrible presentation was actually a good thing all along. In case you can't tell, this is a joke entry. Of course the presentation was bad. Toots are Canadians. When We Like to Play, formerly known as We Like to Pray, they probably changed the name because it was seen as offensive, played Wii Party, one of the first things they noticed was that Party Phil resembles the Canadians from South Park. Well, the only real similarity is the head shape and the flappy mouth. Aside from that, the Toots don't really resemble the South Park Canadians, as they do not have cube hands or rectangular bodies. Intermission. The explanations for these entries aren't quite as long as the ones for the entries earlier on the Iceberg. This is because, to me, the titles mostly explain everything. What could possibly be vague about the E3 presentation was a normie filter? Sebastian Toot is dead and his SSVU spirit is his actual ghost. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about in the intermission. The only thing I have to say here is that spirit can also be used as a synonym for ghost. That is all. Also, Sebastian Toot was probably old since he had white hair. I mentioned that earlier in the Party Phil thing. Layer 11. If Wii Music becomes popular, Yaldabaoth will be defeated. Last but certainly not least, we have this entry. In the E3 presentation was a normie filter entry. Specifically, in its explanation, I implied that Wii Music had some sort of special power. Well, that power is, of course, defeating evil gods. In particular, Yaldabaoth is an evil deity that can be found in many Gnostic religions. Gnosticism is a broad term used to describe many Jewish and Christian-influenced religions, such as Mandaism and Manichaeism, that emphasize personal spiritual knowledge over the dogma of the churches and temples, though they do not necessarily oppose organized religion entirely. Yaldabaoth is considered the demiurge, who is the creator of the physical universe. The demiurge is a concept in Platonism. However, unlike Yaldabaoth, Plato's demiurge is not considered malicious. Not all Gnostic religions hate the demiurge, but they don't exactly love the demiurge either. If a Gnostic sect refers to it as Yaldabaoth, you can be sure that that sect's demiurge is evil. Thanks for watching.
Seriously, thank you so much for watching these videos. It took Aubrey about an entire month to create these presentations, so he would probably appreciate if you liked, commented, and subscribed and all that. You don't have to, but it would be appreciated.
And as always, we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!
That was a terrible Markiplier impression, but
Bye-bye!